Hi again, it's Dren, and I'm here to talk to you today about mixing in the metaverse. I'm not going to use that word again. I'm not. We don't know what it is. We don't know what the metaverse... I said it again. But we can talk about mixing for AR or VR or MR or R&R or the ER. Maybe just the first two or three. Anyhow, we don't know what that M word means, but we do know that there are new forms coming of entertainment, headsets, glasses, immersive music, immersive sound, spatial audio, all these things. So I can talk a little bit about mixing for the things that I've mixed for, and maybe they'll apply to something you're working on. If we talk about augmented reality, we're basically talking about applications such as a Snap Lens Studio or Spark AR or Adobe Aero or Mars Unity. None of those, I don't believe, are really accepting any kind of ambisonic or spatial file formats. They're all just using mono files, and they're kind of doing a fake distance attenuation thing. So if you've got a bouncing ball and you put your camera, your phone, if I put my phone close to the bouncing ball and take it away from the bouncing ball, it'll get louder, it'll get softer as you move your phone closer and further away from the object in augmented reality. That's cool, but it's not really mixing for spatial audio. You know, you can get into those programs like Aero, and you can decide how loud a particular object's going to be. If you've got, say, 6 or 7 objects, you can change the loudness of each one of those objects. There's not a lot of in-depth mixing on those. Spark does have some EQ settings and some other DSP, such as reverb, things like that. It's not easy to automate those things. Takes some doing, some coding, things like that. Anyway, I'm mostly talking about what we can do to mix in our DAWs, in our digital audio workstations, to prepare things that will work in those other types of media. So that brings me to VR next. I'm going to talk about 2 different contexts where I've mixed specifically for these different experiences in VR. So the first one, this one was about a 15-minute animation that was using a program called Quill, which I'll talk about in a minute. And Quill is a VR animation tool. And so this story, it's a linear story that takes place in VR. You view it with a headset, and we mixed it, all the music we mixed in Atmos. And then we did a binaural render of that music. And I'll show you how to do that in a bit. And we did that because within that story, the music didn't need to be head tracked. Head locking is fine for score in VR, I think. I think most people are kind of agreeing with that. So we did have ambisonic files in that project that were ambient files. So if you went into the jungle and the stream was ahead of you, you knew that the stream was over here. And if you moved your head over here, you know, the stream would not move with you, it would stay over here. So you got this head tracking of hearing what the entire environment sounded like as you moved your head. So we had ambisonics that were part of the head tracking, but not the music. So the cool thing about this is that we didn't have to make a stereo file beforehand. You can see my other video, either here or here, depending on how I figure out how YouTube works. There's another video that I did that talks about how we have to make stereo files when we're delivering Atmos mixes to a digital distributor. So you have to deliver your stereo and your Atmos track at the same time. So often we start by making a stereo mix, use those stems to make our Atmos mix. So in this case, we didn't have to do that. There was no reason to do a stereo mix, so that gives us a little bit more freedom. In fact, in both of these contexts, there's no reason to make a stereo mix. So we did our Atmos mix and rendered it binaurally, and I'm going to play that little trailer for you now so you can hear some of the results of how it sounded with the sound design and the ambiances. So here's that trailer for Mescaform Hill. I said I was going to get back to Quill. Quill is a really interesting animation tool in VR. If you have a headset, if you've got a PC, you can use Oculus for free if you've got those things, and you can create your own beautiful 3D animations if you're gifted in that area. If you're someone like me who is not gifted in that area, I can at least put the audio into those things and make it sound good. The interesting thing about Quill is you can bring in a sound, you can see it on your animation timeline, so if it happens when a frog jumps in the water, you can find exactly that frame and match up the audio right on that frame, just like you would in a DAW. And then you see a speaker representation of that sound right in front of you. So there's a speaker that ends up right in front of you right when you import a sound. You hit the checkbox that says spatialized audio, and if it's a mono file, it will do that. You can't spatialize other formats. Stereo file will not spatialize, only a mono file. Once you have that speaker in front of you, then you can do all sorts of things with it. You can turn it around, you can make it bigger or smaller, you can make it a sphere, you can make it a cone, you can have the sound come out of the back of the cone and the front of the cone. There's all sorts of crazy things you can do, including animating the sound. You can have it move around the screen if you want, or spin around the user's head. There's a lot of really fun things you can do with Quill and audio, and it does have the built-in Audio 360 spatializer that is spatializing everything in real time. In fact, I'll show you just a little clip of this crazy animation that I worked on that has all these spinning things around. And you can even see the speakers. I made the speakers visible in the video so you can see how they spin around. So here's that. And then the other context that I was going to talk about in VR was social VR apps. So we have things like Rec Room and VR Chat. And the thing that I'm going to show you now is something I did in Horizon for Horizon Worlds, which is a very similar type of thing. I think it's in beta, but I think anyone is welcome to use it at this point. They were having a Halloween event and we needed some Halloween music. So I'm just going to switch over to my DAW and show you that. Here's how that looked. I mixed it in Atmos. Again, I did not need a stereo mix for this. There was no point in having a stereo mix. It wasn't going to serve any purpose. I'll play this while I talk about it. So this was I had already done a session. Then I created stems from that session because I didn't want to have all my plugins from my session and all my virtual instruments and all that sort of thing. So I have them in here. But you can see, I don't know if you remember or if I've looked at this, but these objects here, if they're square, it's a 3D object. If they're circle, it's a bed. So this one track that doesn't even have anything in it, that was a bed. Basically everything, you can see I automated this one. Look at that one spinning around the room. It's a Halloween track, so it's good to have some things that move around. And so this was a fun little, kind of exploratory, mysterious piece of music to work on for Horizon. And then I'll show you. I'm just going to pause it a second. You can see here I've got a tail bounce. That's also a bed. When you're doing music for interactive projects, often you have to create them as a seamless loop, so that you don't hear it starting over. So one way to do that is if you have reverb in your track, you do a bounce of your mix. I'm going to show you, I would bounce, this is the end of the track, but I would probably bounce the mix way out to here so I get the reverb tail in there. Then what I did was I took just the reverb tail and I brought it to the front of the track here. So that when the piece starts again, that reverb tail doesn't get cut off and it sounds natural as the piece begins. So little interactive music trick there. So this one, again, I mixed this in Atmos, created an ADM, and then I re-rendered that in both binaural and ambisonic files. And I don't know what they ended up putting in the final project, if it was the ambisonic or the binaural. I hope it was the ambisonic because that would have been fun. But here, I'll show you that real quick. So I'm going to switch on over to, this is the Dolby Atmos Renderer, part of the Dolby Atmos Production Suite, or DAPS. So you can just open your master files. This is assuming you finished your ADM. you've got your mix. Here's mine. I'm going to open it. And once it's open, I've already set my renders here in the re-renders tab. I've got one for binaural and one for ambisonic. And when I go here to export audio, I just go choose renders, re-renders, and then it'll show me the options. And I don't need a 5.1, but I need a binaural and an ambisonic. And then all I have to do is hit export, and it creates those files for me. And this is the same process we did for Mescaform Hill. We brought the ADMs into this piece of software, and then we re-rendered them all as binaurals. And that's basically how that works. So just a few tips about mixing in the M word that I'm not going to say, but these are some applications for mixing in these kind of immersive experiences, whether it's all on headset or maybe we'll have some kind of fancy glasses soon. I hear Apple's releasing something with some fancy something or others. It's fun to experiment with some of these ideas and see how our mixes are translating into these different listening formats. So that's all I got today.